G'day, today we're in the Flinders Ranges and we are at the Appealinna ruins. We're going to have a look around here. Joseph Wills set the lease for here in 1856 and we'll explain some of the tragic events that occurred for him to eventually have to leave. So Joseph and his wife Sarah had an extensive vegetable garden here with water from the spring that's behind us, and they set up this stone wall here to stop the wandering stock getting to their vegetables. Now, because water was really scarce back in that day, his neighbours and the mine, which is just 3 kilometres up the road, all wanted a piece of this spring and this water that was here. So they men of influence, they had more say in Parliament than what Joseph did, and they lobbied to have this removed from his lease. Now, what they don't tell you is if you walk down through the garden and you follow the creek bed along, you'll come to what used to be the purser's house. There you go. There it is. You can just see it over the hill there. Alright, so now we're going to head back down the creek because apparently there's still 2 old fig trees and an old almond tree. Let's go and see if we can find them. Alright, so I found the 2 fig trees. I can't see the almond tree. Might not be here anymore, I just can't see it, but there's 1 fig tree over there and the other fig tree is here. Now this fig tree actually has, I can see some actual figs on it, so let's see if I can get to it. There's actually a couple here too, down the road. There you go. Let's see. Oh, look at that. After all these years, after 100 years. There you go. After all these years, it's still producing really sweet figs. So for 13 years, Joseph, his neighbours and the miners fought over the rights to this creek and watering hole. On the right hand side over there we had Joseph with his homestead, and on this side we have the miners. So let's go check out Joseph's side and then we'll come back and have a look at the miners' side of the creek. Okay, so behind me is what's left of Joseph Wills' homestead. It had 4 rooms and a 5th room which didn't have an internal doorway, which probably means it was for guests. The floor is made of flagstone, flat stones interwoven together, and it's got its own little fireplace. And it was probably built by Joseph himself, not by professional stonemasons, because the stonework is actually not quite as neatly cut and put together as some of the others that we'll show you in a minute. Such was the animosity between the miners and Joseph Wills that the miners' cook threatened Sarah that he would set their house on fire. And sure enough, a week later, the roof caught alight and burnt. At the trial, the magistrate said that as it was a windy day, the embers would have travelled and it would have been specified as an accident. You can see here an original picture of the homestead as it was back then. And you're probably wondering what people in the 1850s did for a toilet. Well, sure enough, if you look out the back, out there you'll see a little structure which was the toilet, which was basically a bucket and a hatch at the back that they could empty the bucket as needed. It was quite common for the homestead's kitchen to be actually separated from the house in case there was a fire. You didn't lose the house as well. Now you might think that's all there is to the ruins, but you'd be wrong. We're going to continue down this track and we'll see what's down there. As you walk down the track, you'll start to see some ruins and buildings on the other side of the creek. These were the miners' buildings. So Joseph started taking the law into his own hands. What he did was he impounded 100 of his neighbours' sheep and rounded it up and took them into town to be impounded. His neighbour had to actually then go and pay to have the sheep returned from the pound. There was an incident with one of the shepherds. There is a bit of speculation as to what may have happened, but whichever way it turned out, Joseph unfortunately was then sentenced to 4 years in prison. Hard labour. So while Joseph was still in prison, Sarah and the children kept the station running, and his son Joseph was a brilliant horseman. He actually got work on other runs as well and was working there, and they kept the farm going. So this is the mine manager's house, Matthew Foster, in 1859. You can tell it was professionally built. All the stones are perfectly cut and mitered and joined together, which is why this building has actually stood the test of time. There's a main building and there's 2 separate rooms which would have been for guests. So one of the unusual things you'll see in these buildings is you'll see these corner plates here, which are shelves built into the walls. Okay, so a lot of these buildings still have these in place. So this is a typical miner's hut from 1859. It's very rudimentary. It has basically a fireplace and a small area where they probably would have had a bed, maybe a table and some storage for some food and supplies. And that's about all they would have had here. So the mine manager and the purser kept lobbying government to have the creek and the waterhole removed from the lease. And they actually succeeded in doing that. By doing that, they ripped out the water supply for Joseph and Sarah and their run. So when the new owners of Ikara-Flinders, which is a station nearby, a run nearby, put a fence around the watering hole, Joseph took the law into his own hands and burnt 2 of the shepherds' huts. They went to court. The magistrate said there was no case to answer as they were on his land. But the owners then appealed, went back to court. Joseph lost and he lost the rights to the watering hole. He then had basically fallen behind in his rent on the lease on the property to the government, and they had to basically sell whatever stock they had and basically moved on in 1871, and that's the last we hear of Joseph Wills. So therein lies the tale of Joseph and Sarah Wills and the Appealinna ruins.